What's up, gamers? How you doing? It's John, and in this video I'll be reviewing the new Analogue Duo console. There's two versions I want to show you. To my left, to your right is the white Japanese version. To my right, to your left is the North American black version. They're identical other than color. And what this system is, it's an FPGA console for the Turbo Grafx 16, known here in North America, or the PC Engine known in Japan and the rest of the world. This is a region-free console, so it will play games in all over the world, right? So you can play games from PC Engine, you can play games in North America, you can play CD games, a Super CD, 2 games. I mean, even Super Grafx games, which Super Grafx was pretty obscure, only 7 games were released for it, but you can still play Super Grafx games, which is awesome. So anything created for the Super Grafx or Turbo Grafx 16, PC Engine, CDs, cue cards, you can play it on this console, which is cool. This is an FPGA console. For those who don't know what FPGA is, FPGA stands for Field Programmable Gate Array. That sounds to me like a futuristic light gun, but essentially what that is, it's recreating the hardware, right? This is not emulation. You can still do some really cool things like emulation though. You can add scan lines, you can add filters, you can add save states and stuff like that, but it's not to be confused with emulation. This is superior, right? Analogue's been doing this for quite some time. Their first console they released for FPGA was the Neo Geo. They consoleized the MVS, the arcade version of the Neo Geo. I was one of the first reviewers to do a review on their wooden consoleized Neo Geo back in the day. Awesome console. They then did the NT, which is a FPGA NES, and that was made out of aluminum. They even did a gold-plated one, the super limited edition. Those were all really costly because they were making them out of aluminum, they were making them out of wood, back for the Neo Geo, for example. And then once they started making the Super NT, which is for the Super Nintendo, they switched to plastic to keep the cost down, which is smart. They did Omega SG, which was one for the Genesis. They've done the Pocket, which is a consoleized FPGA handheld. It came out recently as well, and that's my favorite console they've ever did. And that's, in my opinion, better than this, but I'll go into that in a second. And then this is their latest one. This is the Duo, right? And you're thinking to yourself, why would they do a Turbo Grafx 16? It's pretty obscure in North America, right? Only 94 games were released in North America. The system itself, the Turbo Grafx 16, came out in late 80s, 1989 specifically. Only lasted really through 1994, right? Kind of a short lifetime. It was third fiddle to, you know, the Nintendo, and then Sega, and then it came NEC, right? So most people either had a Super Nintendo or Genesis, and very few people had a Turbo Grafx 16. NEC, the company that produced the Turbo Grafx 16, was the first to do many things, right? They were the first company to market a 16-bit console. To be debatable if it was really true 16-bit. There's 2 8-bit processors, but not really true 16-bit. They're also one of the first companies to do a CD-based console, right? And the first that came out in Japan for the PC Engine, and later in North America. I have one of these, and the expansion, I love it. I love my Turbo Grafx 16. I think there are some great games for it. The problem with the Turbo Grafx 16 is it's region locked. You can't play Japanese games on a typical Turbo Grafx 16. I have mine modded, so mine you are able to play import games, but most systems you're not able to do that, unfortunately. That's where this is really cool. Now, here's the thing though. Games are kind of hard to come by, right? It's not like you can go to your average retro game store locally and pick up a Turbo Grafx 16 game, especially a CD game. Now, you might get lucky, you might find a few. Keith Courage, Bonk's Adventure. There's some really common ones that you might find, but if you want to find some more obscure ones, you're probably gonna have to relate going to eBay and other third-party sites to purchase these games, and that can get very costly. This is not jailbroken. I'll talk more about that later in this video, meaning you can't play other ROMs on it through the SD card. That's probably coming soon, I would guess. I'll talk more about that in a second in the video. But without any further ado, let's do an unboxing. Let me show you kind of what's included with this thing. We'll show you some gameplay, just do some comparisons, go from there. Thanks for watching, guys. Okay, let's open this up. This is the Japanese version, and how do I know this? On the very back, it has this symbol here. It says JPN, Japan. Okay, so let's open this up. The only difference between the Japanese version and the US version is the color. So this is the white one, the other one is black. Let's go ahead and open this up. Take off the plastic. One thing I do notice is the quality. Analogue is definitely known for their quality of consoles, right? Initially, they're now plastic. Before, when they first started making consoles, the first one they started was the Neo Geo. So when we talk about, people make comments like, oh, I can't believe they're doing a Turbo Grafx 16 or PC Engine system is very obscure, where, well, the Neo Geo is even more obscure than this. That was the first one they did years ago. Gosh, I mean, a while ago. I think I was one of the first people to do a video on that Neo Geo. It was actually a wooden Neo Geo made out of wood. It was super cool. And then they did the Nintendo, right? And the NES was made out of aluminum. They did one actually plated in gold, which is super rare, super expensive. And then once they started doing the Super NT, the Super Nintendo, they decided to cut costs a little bit, make it a little more affordable. This thing retails for $250 US, so not too bad. So we're going to take off the top. You got some nice foam here to protect it, which is nice. Always good to have that. And this is what it looks like, right? So you have first impression. It is kind of light, right? I mean, it's not like poorly built or anything like that, but it's kind of light. And this is where the CDs would go into. This is the first CD system that Analogue has done. This is where the Hue cards come in. You have the power. You can Bluetooth up to 4 different controllers. You also have a connection here for a standard controller. You're thinking, John, why is there only one port? Well, that's how the PC Engine in Turbo Grafx 16 was. There was only one port. They have the Turbo Tap, you have up to 4. You can have up to 4. There is a head jack here and a volume, which is interesting. And on the back, you have SD card, which is important for, you can save your states, right? You can also keep track of like past games that you've played. HDMI, 2 USB ports. So if you want to hook up like a controller through a USB or anything like that. And this is USB-C, this is for your power. At first, I'm like, does this open for CD? No, the CD goes in here like that, okay? Let's see what else there is. You have your AC adapter, your plug-in adapter, which is important, USB-C plug-in adapter. Let me grab it. My fingers are so fat, it's hard for me to grab that, but you can see there's USB-C. It's got the Analogue logo. I'm not sure how well you can see that. And there's a couple cables here. Let's see what we got. We have USB-C cable for the power. And what else comes with? HDMI cable, right, to hook it up. So those are important cables. Does not noticeable different. It does not come with a controller, right? Controller is done third party through 8-Bit Do. Here is the controller for this. You can get this on Amazon. I think these retail for like $35 to $40 US. So doesn't come with a controller, which is kind of lame. It's nothing new to Analogue. They've done that for a while. They've partnered with 8-Bit Do for that. But just heads up, no controller support out of the box. You have to get that separately. So that is kind of a letdown. And here, what is this? Some type of instructions, I'm assuming. Let's open this up. That's cool. Let's see what else. Some stickers. FPGA or T-bag, whatever you prefer. I prefer T-bag over FPGA, but whatever you want. Okay, and let's open this up. Again, I have really fat fingers. And this is your quick start guide, QR code. It takes you to a website to how to set up. Everything's online, right? It shows you how to eject, press power, hold power off. Quick single press to sleep, awake during gameplay. Rotate, adjust headphone. Okay. Do not insert, remove cue cards while game is running. Okay, that's an important note. Now let's compare this to the Turbo Duo system. Okay, so here's a comparison between the two different versions, right? You have the Japanese and the US version. Other than the colors, they're identical. One thing important to note, I do have an EverDrive flash card, right? This is not compatible with this system, unfortunately, so it will not read ROMs. So the only way to play games as of now on this system is through the actual cue card or CD-ROM. It will play burnt CDs, but it will not play ROMs. This is not, currently as of filming this is not jailbroken, meaning you can't play other ROMs through the SD card. I'd be surprised if that doesn't eventually happen fairly soon. Every other console from Analogue has been able to do that, including the most recent, the Analogue Pocket, which I absolutely love. And you can play Super Nintendo games, Genesis games on that, etc. Because it's jailbroken. I wouldn't be surprised if this is jailbroken soon, where you can play ROMs through the SD card. Okay, now, the design itself. Where did they get the design? Where did they get the name? Analogue Duo. Very simple. It's through this unique and kind of unusual, rare console, the Turbo Duo in the US, also known as the PC Engine Duo in Japan. The PC Engine Duo was white. This is obviously black for the US market. This came out in 1993, retailed for about $300 back then. That was almost $700 in today, which is crazy expensive. But what's cool about it is it plays 2 cards, right? It also plays CDs. And the CD, you'll notice a big difference here. is the CD is loaded to the top here. It will play CD-ROM 2 games, so play games a little more advanced on the CD-ROM scale, and that's a huge bonus. You'll notice here only one controller port, right? And this is your power on and off, and all that jazz, right? So pretty cool. Love my Turbo Duo. Awesome console. If you are a Turbo Grafx 16 fan and want an authentic way to play, this is the ultimate system now, in my opinion, the Turbo Duo. Hence why they get the name the Analogue Duo. Okay? Size-wise, it's fairly comparable. The Analogue Duo, I'd say, is 2/3 the size. Definitely thinner, right? But definitely not as wide either, and not as heavy. Okay? One thing nice I do like about this is it does have kind of a rubber bottom here, which nice grip, and both versions have that, so it has some nice grip to it. They've done a really good job with the design of this. I did notice that the CDs will, like if you want to try to eject the CD, let's turn this on first. And I want to eject the CD. So right now I have a CD in there. Let's give it a second to power on. It comes out kind of slow, right? And then when you want to try to put the CD in, this right now is Fighting Street, which is basically Street Fighter 1. It is Street Fighter 1, another name for it. But you kind of have to put it in a ways for it to grip and take. Now it took it, right? So you have to kind of make sure you don't hold it by the bottom because you can scratch it. But there's an eject button here to eject the CD. Let's see how responsive that is. So yeah, okay, again, kind of have to push in. All right, let's turn this bad boy on and take a look at some gameplay. Here it is, the operating system. Once you turn it on, it's the same as Analog Pocket. They've simplified it. Once you put your cue card or your CD in, it will recognize it. I just put in Bonk's Revenge, for example. There's libraries here. I'm going to dive that into a second. There's also memories. You can do screenshots. Save states are coming. They're not quite set up yet. I just updated to the latest firmware as filming this. And that is not an option, but I'm sure it's coming soon. In fact, it says in the manual it's coming soon, so I'm not quite sure when. There's different HDMI settings you have. You have various libraries here. And the libraries, basically it's a library list of games that have been released for either the PC Engine or Turbo Grafx 16. You cannot play these games unless you have the physical game itself. This is not jailbroken yet, as I mentioned before, which is kind of a letdown, to be honest with you. But going back to the SD card issue, I always have an issue with my SD card, getting it to work and updating the firmware. I ended up having to buy another SanDisk, and it ended up working fine on my second SanDisk. And once that worked, it's pretty easy to update the firmware. So Analog is routinely updating firmwares. I'm sure there'll be another one where you can do save states fairly soon, different more scale lines, etc. So there is no Wi-Fi in this thing. But once you load the game, here's Bonk's Revenge, for example. This is kind of the basic setting. It looks great. I mean, it's very crisp. The color's awesome. It sounds great. There's so much settings you can do. I'm show you in a second. This is Bonk's Revenge. It's a fun game. It's a must-own, great platformer. At one point, NEC was trying to make Bonk kind of their mascot. Although Bonk appeared on the NES, he appeared on the Game Boy as well for Nintendo. So certainly not exclusive to the NEC, Turbo Grafx 16 or PC Engine. Let's go to some settings here. If you hit down and left on the controller, you can go to your settings. I'll show you CRT Trinitron. This is basically what it looks like if it was on a TV monitor. It adds some scan lines to it, and I think it looks pretty good. It's pretty awesome looking, in my opinion. This game is a lot of fun. If you're playing the Bonk's game, it's such a fun game. I love Bonk, the character himself. So because the menu is really easy to access, hitting down and select, very easy to escape the game. You can change settings right away. Just really important to make sure that you pause the game first, because you can go into the settings and have the game start running. I've done that a couple times, and it will you'll die if it hits you on the screen. So important that you hit pause first before you go to the option itself. We'll pause it. Let's go to game detail. Shows you the region. Go to system settings. Video. Let's check out the Turbo Express setting. This is what it would look like if it was on Turbo Express handheld, which I own a Turbo Express. I also own the GT, which is the Japanese version of the handheld, and it's such a great handheld.
I have the TV adapter for it as well, but unfortunately that's obsolete because there's no antenna anymore in my region where I live. But super high tech. I always wanted one as a kid growing up. I thought it was super cool, but also very expensive back in the day. But I can tell you the screen does look like it would play on Turbo Grafx 16 monitor. I think that was a really cool setting here. It looks great in my opinion. Show you the next setting. Go to Duo settings again, video, and let's check out the PC Engine LT. This was a Japanese exclusive. It was kind of a portable. You had to plug it in. LT was laptop, and it would flip up. The screen would flip up. Slightly different than the Turbo Grafx 16 or Turbo Express, so to speak. Slightly different. I prefer the Express scan lines, but this is pretty cool as well. Let's also show you some other additional options you have. Mode settings. Let's go back to Analog TG16. I prefer this one. You can do sharpness. You can do 1 or 2. Subtle difference there. Not a huge difference, to be honest with you. Looks a little more blurred, in my opinion, right? They fine-tuned the edges of the sprites. I think it looks a little bit more unnatural, to be honest with you, on that setting. Let's turn it back to 3. You can adjust the width size as well. You can make it wider. You can do the height, adjust the height, make it shorter or taller, for example. All in real time, which is nice because you can see the screen itself, so you can kind of see how big you want it. And depending on how big your monitor is, right? But you don't want to make it too stretched out. I kind of prefer the standard settings that it comes with. I think that's probably the best setting, to be honest. We'll go back to the original setting. There's also scales here, 3x, kind of small, really small, 4x, and 5x. I'm not quite sure why you'd want it to be 3x or 4x, to be honest, and maybe it's a little more detailed on the smaller scale there. I just prefer to play full screen. Show overscan. I don't see a huge difference here between show and unshown overscan. In color palette, you have the RGB. This is like the 3-prong or RGB setting, and composite. Composite would be like the red, yellow, white in RGB. There is some color difference here, right? This is kind of the old school RGB. We'll go to display mode and see kind of what it looks like. Resume game. Yeah, this would look like if you were doing RGB. This is pretty cool, actually. The setting looks neat. It looks more pinkish, in my opinion, than normal. Well, and exit this game. I'll put a CD in, show you how long it takes to kind of read the CD. I guess it varies on what CD it is, but for the most part, it takes about 10 to 20 seconds. But this game I'm going to show you is Fighting Street, also known as Street Fighter 1. And this is drastically different than Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter 2 is probably one of the best sequels of all time. But when you go to memory, you can see there real quickly, you can see kind of what memory games you've been playing. You can add images as well to the SD card. We're going to change the settings here to, let's go to system. And I'm going to do, this is 720 instead of 1080. You can see the screen is smaller. And the game plays choppy. This is how it plays, believe it or not. I'm Ryu. And wow, what a drastic difference between Fighting Street or Street Fighter 1, which is basically arcade, and Capcom's follow-up, Street Fighter 2. Huge upgrade, as you can see. It's amazingly different game. Now we're at 6. It's hard to believe. Go ahead and quit this. Confirm. Alright, I'm going to show you a Super Graphics game. Actually, I have a Super Graphics system and a couple games. I think only 5 or so games that should come out for the system. This is Golden Ghost. I don't know how you pronounce it in Japanese, so I'm not going to butcher it. But this is like the definitive version of the arcade version to play. And the Super Graphics is updated RAM, and it's just updated graphics. Really cool system. Unfortunately, it wasn't really supported, and it's really hard to find games for it, particularly now. Move on to Ease Book 1 and 2 for the CD attachment. And this plays as well. I just want to show you this example too. I love the audio. The music's great. If you never played these, a really fun game and really fun RPG game. Definitely would recommend checking it out. You move on. I'm going to test a CD game that's for Japan. It's, I believe, Capcom game. I don't know how to pronounce it in Japan. I'm going to butcher it again, but Really fun shooter. And to my opinion, I think the PC Engine and Turbo Grafx 16 have some great shooters. And this is one of them. Amazing sound and sound effects, and show you a brief intro to the game here. And here it is. This game is crazy hard. The power-ups are a lot of fun though. And this is playing on a CD, so Japanese. So it does work. It is region free. Those enemies there reminds me of like kind of Star Fox type graphics. And that's one benefit of having the system. You can play games like this. Moving on to another game, Splatterhouse. This is a must-own game for the Turbo Grafx 16. Also ported to the Genesis or Mega Drive as well. This one's slightly different. The mask is red, not white, and I think they did that intentionally because the white mask maybe was too close to Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th. And this one isn't as bloody as the Genesis / Mega Drive version. But man, this game is super challenging, and I always love playing this during the Halloween time. But I wanted to show this because it's one of my favorite games for the platform. Here's another game, Gamester81. This is one of the rare like third-party games that came out for the Turbo Grafx 16, based on the arcade by Namco. And if you like Galaga, this is definitely a game to check out. Updated graphics, updated audio, gameplay. There's some new enemies and cool backgrounds. Actually, pretty decent arcade port if you played the arcade before. Pretty decent arcade port. This game, also in my opinion, is a must-own for the Turbo Grafx 16. Here's another game. This is actually John Madden Football. This is a Super CD-ROM 2 game on the CD. So I just want to show you an example of this. This was playable also on the Turbo Duo. I showed you that earlier in this review. And this is an early John Madden game. Man, has this franchise changed since then. My son just got Madden 24. And wow, how it's changed. I think this is even before they had the licenses for the actual teams themselves. But I just want to show you that it does play on it. No issues at all. Gotta love the load times there. Here's a coin flip. Check this out. Made a full motion video there. It's so classic. Classic CDs, like 90s CD games, right? Here's a very obscure game. This is called Strip Fighter 2 for the PC Engine, right? I'm actually scared to admit that I actually own a copy of this game. And it is an adult game, so there's some nudity. Some of the characters in this game, during their fights, you can see some nudity. And when you beat the first round, you see a picture of a woman in a bikini, and if you beat her the second time, you see a full frontal nude. You've got to actually play the game to see the nude. I'm going to show it here, but here's an example of the bikini part. Now I'm going to show you, after this, I'm going to show you a comparison of the game. This is going to be Airzonk, and this is playing on both the Analogue Duo as well as Turbo Grafx 16. You can kind of see the difference, the way the game looks itself.
So in conclusion, what do I think about the Analogue Duo? I think overall it's a quality system, right? If I were to give it like a 10-point scale, 10 being the best system, 1 being the worst system, I'd probably give this a 7, to be honest. This is a great console if you're a fan of Turbo Grafx 16 PC Engine, which I am. So I like it in that sense because I can go. I have a library of games. I have about 70 games, hue cards, and a handful of CDs. I can go and play, and I have a library available to me. If you don't currently have a Turbo Grafx 16 and you don't have any games, you're gonna have a hard time getting games to play for it. And that's just the nature of the system because it was obscure and didn't do as well. So this may not be the best system for you, to be honest with you. And if I were you, my recommendation, if you want an FPGA console, is check out the Pocket. I absolutely love the Pocket. This is what it is. And there's an adapter coming out for it. You can play hue cards eventually. It's coming out soon. You can play Turbo Grafx 16 games on it. It's also open, right? So meaning it's jailbroken, so you can play ROMs on it. You can dock it to your TV and play on your TV and use a wireless controller. You can even use the same controller. So to me, this retails for $220. This is $250. Now, granted, $100 for the dock, so you're really looking at $320, so a little bit extra. But you can get a lot more games. You can bring this to go. The battery lasts a long time. Pocket's the way to go. If you're looking for an FPGA console, this is the way to go. But if you're a diehard Turbo Grafx 16 game or a fan, you might want to look at the Duo. That's my honest opinion. I give the Pocket, this is like a 9 out of 10. I love this thing. And there's different colors. They have a glow and dark version. They just released different colors of it now as well. This also will play EverDrive. I have an EverDrive cart in this now. It will play EverDrive carts This will not. And I'm kind of disappointed that's the case. This will not play EverDrive. So I'm a little disappointed that's a fact. Hopefully they can update the firmware, and that's the benefit of this FPGA. They can update firmwares. Hopefully they correct that mistake. Overall, thank you for watching, guys. I appreciate you guys subscribing. Let me know what you guys think of the Duo. If you have a Duo, let me know what you think. What are some Turbo Grafx 16 or PC Engine games you recommend? I'm going to be diving more into it, especially the foreign ones that you can't really play much, right? And I'll be doing that on my Pocket because I can play now on the Pocket. Thanks, guys, for watching. We'll see you guys soon. Take care. And, of course, game on.